Imagine you are permanently trapped in a sealed concrete room. Like an earthquake has hit. The exits are completely blocked, and there is zero chance of rescue. You have no tools, no way out. The inevitable physical outcome is death. How do you escape?
I mean, most of us would just panic, right? We would claw at the walls until our hands' blood just totally consumed by the terror of the physical reality closing in on us.
Yeah, exactly. But today, we are exploring a radical philosophical framework that claims the only way out of that room isn't physical at all. It's actually through your consciousness. So, welcome to the deep dive.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're looking at a fascinating and, well, at times highly controversial series of mental exercises from a writer named Su Feng.
Right, published around 2012 and 2013 under the title Thinking Self-Cultivation.
Right. And to be clear right up front, our mission today isn't to tell you what to believe. We're just going to objectively explore these ideas and, examine the underlying logic of a framework that is explicitly designed to upgrade human consciousness. Yeah, and to understand how it attempts to do that, we really have to establish the foundation this entire philosophy is built on. Because the core premise here is that the physical environment you exist in, so your body, your surroundings, your life circumstances, it's all determined entirely by your non-material structure.
By non-material structure, you mean?
By that, the writings mean your consciousness.
So it claims our physical reality is just like a mirror of our mental level.
That is the assertion, yeah.
Yeah.
It lays out this hierarchy of existence based on consciousness. At the lower end, you have animals governed by pure instinct, like pigs and dogs. Humans sit in the middle.
Okay, humans are in the middle.
Right, but the hierarchy reaches upward to entities the author describes as gods, Buddhas, and celestial beings.
Wow, okay. And the ultimate goal of these exercises is to elevate your thinking to approach the 8 characteristics of what the text calls the greatest creator. There are 8 specific traits mentioned. Things like uniqueness, absolute wisdom, being completely impartial, and even having amorphousness and superpower. Now look, you and I probably aren't going to evolve into amorphous celestial beings in the next 15 minutes, but we could definitely stretch our brains trying.
Well, stretching the brain is the whole point, because the path to elevating your consciousness doesn't start with, mystical incantations. It starts by interrogating something incredibly mundane.
Right.
It basically asks you to look at what you are clinging to in your everyday life right now.
Like a basket of apples. There's this early thought experiment presented that seems, well, deceptively simple. You have a basket of apples of varying quality. Some are crisp and perfect. Some are bruised and starting to turn.
Yeah.
Do you eat the best ones first or the worst ones first?
It sounds like a logic puzzle you'd find in a magazine, honestly.
Yeah.
But the framework uses it as a mirror for your entire worldview.
I immediately thought about binge watching a new television show. When a highly anticipated season drops, do you save the finale, the absolute best part, for last so you have something to look forward to? Or do you consume it immediately because you just can't wait?
Right, the psychology of consumption.
Yeah, but with the apples, I have to push back on the framework's underlying assumption. If you eat the bad bruised apples first, the good ones are just sitting there rotting.
Yes.
So by the time you finally get to them, they're bad too. You're just eating rotting apples for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
How is eating the good ones first, not just basic practical logic?
What's fascinating here is that your practical logic is actually what's being dissected.
Yeah.
When you argue for eating the best apple first, your focus is entirely on maximizing the utility of the object.
Right. I want the optimum experience from the fruit before it goes bad.
Exactly, but the philosophical question being posed is about the psychological weight of possession. Why is it so much easier for humans to acquire things than to let them go? To illustrate this, the writings bring up another common phenomenon: borrowed books versus owned books.
Oh man, the graveyard of unread books on my nightstand. I know this one way too well.
We all do. When you borrow a book from a library or a friend, you read it quickly. There is a deadline, right? It doesn't belong to you.
Yeah, you have to give it back.
But when you purchase a book and own it, it just sits on the shelf, gathering dust. The insight here is about how human consciousness processes ownership. The framework argues that we fundamentally fail to cherish what we already possess.
Because the thrill is just in the chase.
In part, yeah. It cites the old proverb that someone else's spouse always seems better. We're just obsessed with the act of acquiring, but the moment something is secured as ours, it loses its active value in our minds.
We take it completely for granted.
Exactly. Ownership becomes this static, unexamined state.
So we trap ourselves in this cycle. We want the best apple, but once we have it, we're already worrying about the rotting ones or looking for a new basket entirely.
Right.
But if we are so terrible at managing a basket of apples or a stack of books, it makes you wonder how we handle the bigger picture, like our environment and our actual definitions of freedom.
And that is exactly where the philosophy scales up. If our relationship with physical possessions is flawed, well, our relationship with the natural world is likely just as distorted.
There's a scenario presented next that really challenges our hubris as humans. So imagine building a massive, enclosed wire mesh paradise for birds. We're talking dozens of meters wide.
A huge space.
Yeah, huge. It has flowing streams, abundant food, beautiful trees, artificial nests. It is a total utopia, completely safe from predators. But it is enclosed. The thought experiment asks, is building this cruel because it restricts the birds' access to the open sky? Or is it kind because it protects them and provides everything they could ever need?
This dilemma forces us to define what we actually consider to be natural law. The writings ask us to look at the inconsistencies in our logic here.
How so?
Well, if wolves eating sheep in the wild is simply natural law, is a human eating a sheep natural? What about humans domesticating wild animals, like ostriches or deer? Are humans violating nature when we intervene, or are we just expressing a different form of it?
But wait, if humans evolved on Earth just like the wolves, aren't we by definition creatures of nature? Doesn't that make the wire mesh bird park also a product of natural law?
That's a great question.
It feels like we just take our primal instinct to control our environment, secure our safety, and we give it a fancy name like architecture or civilization. Can humans actually transcend natural law, or are we just renaming our animal instincts to feel superior?
That is the exact friction being highlighted. We exist in this really strange middle ground. To illustrate the tension between our biology and our societal rules, the framework brings up the Oedipus and Electra complexes.
Okay, wait. Those are heavy psychoanalytic concepts from Freud. How do they fit into a discussion about natural law?
So in psychology, those complexes refer to unconscious primal biological drives, like early attachments to parents, unconscious rivalries. Now, from a purely natural biological standpoint, a primal drive is blameless. It is simply nature operating within the organism.
Right, it's just biology doing its thing.
Exactly. But human ethics, our societal structures and our taboos, deem those specific drives to be deeply wrong and destructive.
So we have these inner natural drives that conflict violently with the moral codes we've invented just to keep civilization running smoothly.
And the philosophy points out that this conflict leaves us in a constant state of imprisonment. Think about it. If you follow your inner natural drives without filter, you will likely disrupt societal harmony and face severe consequences.
Yeah, you'd be in a lot of trouble.
But if you carefully weigh the pros and cons to abide by societal morality, constantly suppressing your instincts, you often feel constrained and deeply dissatisfied. The writings basically push you to question whether true progress relies on breaking old traditions or submitting to them. Either way, if you are bound by the physical world's rules, you are caught in a mental cage.
Wow. So we're just stumbling around in this cage full of conflicting instincts and rules. Naturally, that is going to cause friction with other people who are also stumbling around.
Oh, absolutely.
So what does this all mean? When things inevitably go wrong, how does this framework suggest we handle the fallout?
It uses a very stark scenario to test our default reactions to conflict and tragedy. So a wild rabbit runs across a road and gets hit by a car. Who is responsible? Is it the rabbit's fault for crossing, the driver's fault for not stopping, or the road's fault for being there?
It's basically an exercise in assigning blame.
It is, and the philosophy takes this analogy and applies it directly to human mistreatment, making a highly controversial claim in the process. It asks, if someone insults you, deceives you, bullies, or exploits you, whose fault is it? Is it the universe's fault? Is it the bully's fault? Or is it your own fault?
Okay, I have to stop you there, because practically everyone listening would instantly say it is the bully's fault. Saying it's the victim's fault for being bullied is classic victim blaming. I mean, people are going to strongly recoil at that, and understandably so. How does the framework even attempt to justify that leap?
It is a jarring perspective, I completely agree. And it is important to understand the mechanism behind the claim rather than just the shock value. We aren't endorsing this, but exploring the logic. The framework isn't excusing the bully's actions in a legal or moral sense. Rather, it is demanding that the individual stop viewing themselves as a passive victim of random injustice. Remember the core premise we talked about earlier? Your consciousness determines your environment. The philosophy asserts that you have a hand in co-creating the situations you find yourself in through your non-material structure.
It actually uses a really vivid metaphor here
Yeah.
that might make that concept a bit clearer. It compares night-blooming jasmine to dung.
Yes.
The jasmine emits a beautiful, pleasant fragrance, and the dung emits a terrible stench. But neither is doing it maliciously or intentionally, right?
Yeah.
They emit what they emit simply because of their internal physical structures.
Yes, exactly. So the framework asks, when a person is filled with resentment and they go around spreading negativity and pessimistic messages, which one are they? The jasmine or the dung?
Let's ground this in reality for a second. Think about that one highly toxic coworker or that person on social media who is perpetually outraged. They're always complaining, always finding the worst in a situation and dragging everyone else down. The framework suggests they aren't necessarily evil, they're just emitting the stench of their internal structure.
And crucially, it forces you to look at your own scent. The energy you put into the world, the reactions you provoke from others, those are a direct result of your structural consciousness. If you emit resentment, you will attract conflict.
But wait, what if you were spreading negativity because you were legitimately right about an injustice?
Yeah.
What if that toxic coworker is actually complaining about a real safety hazard?
That's a fair point.
This actually brings up a mind-bending contradiction from the text that I had to read multiple times. It states, everyone's actions are correct, but then almost immediately says, the moment you think you're right, you're already wrong.
Yeah, let's unpack the logic there because it is really central to elevating human consciousness in this system. Everyone's actions are correct means that from any individual's specific vantage point, their actions make perfect logical sense to them. Given their life experiences, their biological drives, and their current level of understanding, they are solving the equation of life correctly according to their own math. The bully believes their aggression is a justified defense mechanism. The victim believes their resentment is a justified response to pain.
So internally, everyone is the hero of their own story. Their math checks out, even if the result is objectively terrible.
Exactly. But the second half, the moment you think you're right, you're already wrong, is where the mental upgrade happens. The philosophy posits that absolute certainty is a trap.
How so?
The universe is infinitely complex. The moment you declare that your specific limited vantage point holds the absolute unequivocal truth, you basically build a wall around your mind. You stop seeking to understand the multiple layers of reality. Thinking you are right makes you wrong because it creates a rigid mental prison that prevents any further growth.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If our certainty is just a prison, and our perceptions of freedom, possession, and blame are this flawed, it makes you wonder what is actually real. If all these physical rules contradict each other, what are we supposed to trust?
That is the threshold this philosophy pushes you toward. To escape the cage, you have to question the fabric of reality itself.
It brings up the concept of dreams. When you are dreaming, the joy and the terror feel completely authentic. Your heart races, your palms sweat. You wake up, realize it was just a dream, and suddenly those intense emotions seem silly. They were just ephemeral bubbles.
Right.
So the source asks a really provocative question to the reader. If everything in our physical world is constantly growing, aging, and dying, does time actually exist? Or is our waking experience just another dream we are taking way too seriously?
To explore the nature of that dream, the framework references Bodhidharma, the legendary Buddhist monk.
Right, the wall-gazing monk.
Yes. The story goes that he sat facing a wall, completely motionless, without interacting with the external world for 9 years. The writings pose a question here during those 9 years. Where did his consciousness go? If his brain had absolutely no access to external sensory input, was he alive or dead?
It suggests his consciousness was traveling and experiencing things entirely independent of his physical body.
It introduces a concept called the information retention space. The idea here is that human memory and consciousness are not merely localized inside the physical tissue of the brain, they exist in a broader, non-material space.
Kind of like a cloud server for consciousness.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. Conceptualize it like a cloud server. Bodhidharma, within this framework, demonstrates that consciousness doesn't need the physical world to operate. It can detach and exist within this information retention space.
Which brings us all the way back to the opening hook of our deep dive. The most extreme thought experiment in the entire series, The Concrete Room. You are permanently trapped. Sealed in after an earthquake, no tools, zero chance of rescue. The inevitable physical outcome is death. We established earlier that panicking and clawing at the walls is the default human reaction. So what is the answer the philosophy is looking for? How do you escape?
Well, if you operate purely on the human level, you succumb to terror because you believe your physical body is your entire existence. If the body dies, you end. But the framework argues the only true escape is through consciousness.
How does that actually work in practice? Are you just hallucinating a way out while you slowly run out of oxygen?
No, it's about recognizing the nature of the dream we discussed earlier. If physical events are just ephemeral bubbles, why remain so fiercely attached to the physical outcome of surviving the concrete room? The room is just another scenario. The framework emphasizes that the process of experiencing the journey is life itself, not the physical results.
So even dying in the concrete room is just part of a process your consciousness is going through.
Exactly. It raises the ultimate question of destiny versus striving. If our physical destiny is just a pre-written program, like if the earthquake and the sealed room were always going to happen, then our mental cultivation is our only true agency.
Wow.
Our ability to detach from the physical terror of the room and enter that information retention space is the only freedom we have. The source asserts that this specific mental cultivation, this detachment from physical outcomes, is the key to unlocking what it calls the 64 divine abilities.
The 64 divine abilities. That sounds like a skill tree you'd unlock in a video game. What are they?
It is the framework's terminology for the infinite potential of a consciousness that is no longer bound by physical laws. Conceptually, it represents things like profound intuition, clairvoyance, or the ability to manipulate non-material structures. The claim is that these abilities unlock naturally when you stop trying to desperately control the physical world and instead focus entirely on elevating your non-material life level.
Okay, this has been a massive mental workout. Let's take a breath and summarize where this journey has taken us. This framework suggests that elevating your life level isn't about acquiring more books for your nightstand, or hoarding the best apples, or enforcing your definition of natural law in a wire mesh bird park. It requires letting go of absolute certainty.
Absolutely.
It challenges you to take radical responsibility for the fragrance or the stench you emit into the world, rather than pointing fingers at everyone else. And ultimately, it asks you to consider that physical constraints, even a sealed concrete room, might just be a dream your consciousness hasn't woken up from yet.
It thoroughly dismantles our default way of moving through the world. And to leave you with one final thought to mull over, we talked about that information retention space, right? The idea that consciousness exists outside the physical brain.
Right.
If that is true, and if our physical reality is truly as malleable and illusory as a dream, what happens to that information retention space when we, collectively, change our minds about a deeply held societal belief?
Oh.
If consciousness dictates physical form, are we actively reprogramming the simulation of reality right now simply by contemplating these concepts together? Every paradigm shift in human thought might literally be rewriting the code of our physical environment.
Now that is going to keep me up tonight. Are we reshaping the physical world just by stretching our brains in this direction? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your reality, pay attention to the energy you are emitting, and remember that the resistance you feel when challenging your own beliefs might just be the only way to truly escape the room. Catch you next time.